Welcome back, Tiger fans, to Rockin' Radio's football podcast. I'm Nate Edwards. That's Brandon BK Kiley, and this is Before the Box Score. Tennessee Hate Week. Man, BK, where were you the last time Missouri beat Tennessee? Where were you? What were you doing?
The last time that I beat them, 2018, what would I have been doing? It would have been the year before. No, it was the year before. So I was getting ready to move to Kansas City, actually. About a month and a half later, I would move to Kansas City. So at the time, I would have been chilling in St. Louis, not thinking anything else. That would have been the year that I first started writing for Rock M Nation, right?
No,
I believe.
That was 2019 that you started.
That's right. Yep, because the first game that I wrote about was Wyoming.
I know, that's the first Beyond the Box score I wrote. Yeah.
And then I wrote a love letter to the OC, and bada boom, bada bing, ipso facto, Bob's your uncle. Yeah, so 2018 was a good Mizzou football season, and I was enjoying the hell out of watching Drew Lock finally really reach his potential and being frustrated by the fact that they were wasting it away in these one-score games.
I know. So it was awful. So 2018, I watched it in my basement. I know, I checked. I have pictures from that day. It was so long ago that my kindergartner, it was 5 months old last time Missouri beat Tennessee. So it's been a while. I think we're overdue. That 2018 team, we were talking about this before the show. A lot of names of guys that you just kind of remember in the ether. For example, Jeremy Pruitt was the head coach of Tennessee. That was his first year in charge. Jarrett Garantano was the quarterback of the Volunteers at the time, if you remember that name. And that's, Missouri beat him. Now, after that, Jeremy Pruitt went on a run for 2 years. And then, of course, Josh Heupel has continued that run. But you know what? Something to prove. Why not now? Why stop now? All the good phrases that we're using this year. Let's flip the script. But before we get into Tennessee week, we got some business to touch on. Have you ever hosted a podcast about Missouri football and gotten so geeked up about Georgia that you forgot to talk about a decommit? Because let me tell you, it's happened to me. I think it was about 2 weeks ago at this point that we did have a decommit from the recruiting class. Cam Dooley from the 2024 class decommitted. I believe he was listed as an athlete. The staff seemed to like him as a safety, but when you look at his tape, BK, when you wrote about his commitment, a little bit of a project, right?
Yeah, I don't know how I was supposed to evaluate him when his entire film was like him doing stuff on the offensive side of the ball with like one highlight of him as a safety. And I was like, don't really know what I'm supposed to do with this here. That being said, he was 6'4", 200 pounds, and was an awesome basketball player and helped his team to an undefeated record at the 5A level in Alabama. So, like, a legitimately really good athlete. He averaged 18 and 10 for his team as a 6'4" kid. So, like, again, he made all the sense in the world given kind of the way that they're utilizing a lot of their safeties. So he could have been somebody that fit into that Jalen Carlisle role where you're kind of a single high safety with speed and length and everything that they like back there. He could have been somebody that bulked up and played the star role the way that Dalen Carnell has. I don't know. It could have been a combination of both where they wanted him to kind of move around. Whatever the case, it doesn't matter. I don't have to think about that any longer because he's no longer going to end up at Missouri. When I wrote about him for my recruiting reset, this is what I said for when he'll play, Nate. It could be a while. Dooley's considered to be a project. Mizzou's taking his commitment because he's an athlete with the ability to become a great football player, not because he's a finished product right now with the ability to get more athletic. So this was a big-time project, and he decided, I'm going to explore my other options. From what everybody is saying, this was not a Mizzou decision, by the way. Mizzou wanted him legitimately, and he chose to decommit. So just as context there.
And I believe he said, like, hey, Mizzou's still in the mix. They're still up there. He's just...
He's a kid that was looking at Kentucky, and it's closer to home. I wonder if it's just a scenario where that made more sense.
Could be, yeah. So, good luck, Cam. We'll see where you end up. Hopefully you enjoy it wherever you go. But, of course, Missouri's recruiting class shrinks by one. They tumble in the rankings a little bit frankly, I don't care too much at this point. It's tough to it's tough to look at a recruiting class without the incoming transfers and get a real holistic view of how your team is going to look going forward. We'll see how the team reacts as far as high school recruiting and how they fill in spots through the portal. But it sucks to get a decommit, but we'll see what happens. But good luck to him.
If they were fine in any spot, by the way, it was in the secondary.
There's so many safeties.
In terms of depth. Like they have all the depth they need. Now, if you want to talk about whether or not they've got legit starters for next year, if some of these guys leave, that's a legitimate question mark. But we've seen Philip Roche, Marvin Burks, Cardinell has played well. Sidney Williams has played a decent amount this year. Travis Johnson has played a decent amount this year. They've had a lot of dudes that have played on the back end. And so if he was going to project to that spot, all things considered, if you had to lose somebody, that's probably the spot where you wanted to lose them.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of losses, it sounds like that Missouri lost a starter and a captain for this season. Chad Bailey, the starting middle linebacker for your Missouri Tigers. He was a graduate player. He was in his bonus COVID year. He had surgery really close to the beginning of the year and was slowly getting worked back in. And it sounds like he re-aggravated the injury and is going to miss the rest of the season. So your first thought, I think a couple of people that I saw was like, well, can he take a medical red shirt? Well, you're asking people to prognosticate on the NCAA, which is a fool's errand to start with. He, again, bonus year, he had played 5 games. There hasn't been a lot of snaps, 181 this season. But when Eli Drinkwitz mentioned today, excuse me, that he was done for the year, he also had mentioned that the staff was getting Chad prepared for draft evaluation. So it kind of sounds like this is a shutdown thing. If that is the case, Chad finishes playing in 43 games, nearly 1,300 snaps, 133 tackles, 13.5 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks, 25 run stuffs, 4 passes broken up, and 3 forced fumbles, which is all well and good. But BK, given his recruiting pedigree coming out of high school and all the potential that he flashed, this is mostly just going to be a story of a guy who was awesome and just couldn't stay healthy enough to see the field for all 6 years.
Yeah, a big part of Missouri's renaissance defensively last year was Chad Bailey becoming the player that everybody wanted him to be. Everybody was looking for somebody to step up at that middle linebacker position. How many guys did they go through, Nate, over the last few years before finally they were able to get Chad Bailey in there? I was like, oh, yeah, the former 4-star recruit that is super athletic and big and strong and fast, like that's probably the guy you should have been playing all along, and it just took them way too long to settle on him. But when he got out there, it completely changed the defense. When was that? It was 21, late in the season when they finally were able to get to him. Yep. Mm-hmm. And it completely changed the way that you viewed what they were doing defensively. And then last year, they really found his spot in the defense. And he was utilized as a guy that was able to create havoc. He was utilized as the guy that shut down the run in the middle when they could use Hopper as more of the sideline-to-sideline guy that was blitzing and all of these different things. He was a key component to what they were trying to do. And honestly, if they had him this weekend at full strength, I would feel a lot better about this game going up against Tennessee, because he's the exact type of piece that they're kind of missing right now in the middle of their defense to be able to stop their run. So it sucks that this is the way that it goes. He was a really good player at his peak, but you're right. The story of his career really at Missouri is just the inability to consistently get on and then stay on the field.
Mm-hmm. Well, this happens every once in a while. It's tough. It's a tough hand to be dealt. Daniel Alexander had the same thing. He had one awesome year, but every other year it was just like, oh, I can't stay healthy. And it's a shame for guys who work so hard and train so hard to be kind of betrayed by their own bodies that can't stay healthy. But, sometimes this sort of thing happens. So good luck to Chad.
Kind of Kill Garrett style.
Yeah. Yeah. And gosh, what's left in the linebacking core? You still got Tyron Hopper, and then Chuck Hicks is the guy who's kind of been the snap stealer from Chad Bailey over the past couple games, at least for this season. Who's performed admirably, had a couple of havoc plays against Georgia, but yeah, you'd love to have Chad against Tennessee. So we'll see if it's a platoon system or if Chuck is just going to stay out there the entire time. But that's what we're left with. So, yeah, good luck to Chad. Hopefully everything goes well and you recover. You want to talk about Georgia like one more time, since it was a good game for if nothing else. It's okay. It's okay.
I know.
Here's the thing. We've been very clear on how moral victories don't count towards anything, and we're still getting the loser mentality sort of comments about this take. I don't know what to tell you all. It was a great game. Missouri played very well. Any way you look at it, whether raw stats, everything was even. Advanced stats, Missouri's offense was actually better. In my beyond the box score, I parked in the tweet from Parker from Stats of War, who showed just how much more successful Missouri's offense was on the whole. If you want something to take away from, why are you celebrating a loss? Well, okay, Missouri's post-game win expectancy was 35%. So there you go. You probably weren't going to win the game when you throw 2 interceptions instead of, score and keep up. But I think the thing that really we're just taking away again is that Missouri performed well. And the stat that stood out to me that I didn't talk about in the show, which I did find out as we went through for the rest of as I was going through beyond the box score, was the offensive line, which I know we talked about a little bit. But I want you to hear this. Georgia's run defense, right? Georgia run defense. It's like, peanut butter and jelly, right? Like they just completely go together. You always know Georgia's got a stout run defense. Heading into this game, Georgia opponents, on average, had a 37.2% success rate on the ground, 44.2% opportunity rate, meaning you get at least 4 yards, only 44% of the time. And Georgia was stuffing runs at or behind the line of scrimmage 24% of the time. Against Missouri's offensive line, okay, they finished with a 51.6% success rate, which math tells me that's 14% better. A 58.1% opportunity rate, which, again, 14% better. And they only had a 16% stuff rate, and that's counting Nathaniel Pete's 2 runs stuffed at the line. Missouri's offensive line worked Georgia's defensive front 7. And that's a sentence I got to type into the internet and be true. And frankly, I couldn't believe it. I had to run the numbers again, but it actually happened.
Missouri played so well. They played so well. And that is both the blessing and the curse of games like this is it doesn't matter. Because in the end, what you will remember is that Missouri lost. And frankly, it'll become a footnote. Like this is how games like that end up, is 10 years from now, you're probably not going to remember that game. Not in a meaningful way. Now, if they won, in your memory bank, you would have all of these little itty bitty pieces of that game that immediately flash back into your mind as like, oh my God, do you remember X, Y, or Z, right? For individual games for me, like I remember the Florida game after the Georgia game in 2013, I believe it was, where LaDainian Washington is just streaking down the sideline. At the time, I was a student and I was walking into the stadium as that happened. Then you get the Gator chomp. Like it's the whole thing, right? So it could have been one of those kind of games. And instead, what you remember is, God, they were so close. They were just so close to being able to pull it off. And they threw it to the opposing defensive tackle, and there's nothing you can do about it,
I did point out after South Carolina and Kentucky games how during kickoffs, instead of kicking the ball out of the end zone, Harrison Mevis had been kicking it, and it like lands somewhere between like the 5 and 10 yard line. And I looked at it. I was like, okay, so maybe is there a purpose to this? What is it? And I crunched the numbers, and so I looked at all the kickoffs that he had done when they were going out of bounds, like before those 2 games, compared to what he was doing when he was kind of popping it up almost. And to whatever credit you want to attribute it to, it was helping in the field position battle. Strangely enough, opponents were starting at like the 25.2 on average when he was kicking off. Not that way. Once you hit Kentucky, South Carolina, those 2, when he was popping it up, they were terrible at returning the ball, and they were starting on their own 20. Right, so that's a 5-yard change in average field position, and that makes a difference over 10, 11, 12 possessions. I was like, okay, so maybe this is on purpose. And then they did it against Georgia and gave up 105 yards returning. And not only that, but each time Georgia scored a touchdown, they started past their 30-yard line because they had a killer return. If they started behind their 30-yard line, they only kicked one field goal. Everything else they had to punt. So it was like, okay, maybe you shouldn't have been doing that. And then Harrison Mevis comes out today and says, hey, I've been screwing it up. I've been kicking them like field goals instead of like a soccer ball. And now Eli Drinkwitz is saying, hey, Blake Craig's going to get in there. Maybe you give it a shot. So I don't know. Like, I know special teams isn't the sexiest thing to talk about, but it's those hidden yardage things, the little things report card that I put out there that helps you win on the margins and things that you don't think about. And I thought it was the coaching staff getting cute and successful, and instead it was just a screw up that was benefiting for 2 games instead of 3 games.
Yeah, the funny thing is, like, Harrison Mevis has mostly been pretty good on his field goals in the time in which he's been doing this. So you almost wonder, like, was he focusing so much on the field goal kicking that then it impacted his kickoffs? And if they end up going this path where they've got a kickoff specialist, maybe that ends up being the best thing for both sides of it, where Mevis now can focus exclusively on just, hey, make your kicks, man. He made earlier this season like 55% of his field goals. That's not what you're looking for from your field goal kicker. So instead, let's go with the guy that over the last 3 weeks has made 7 of his 8 opportunities. Let's go with that guy. That matters a lot more than the kickoffs that are going into the end zone.
Yeah,
we've got another
2 for 2, 2 for 2 against Georgia, 2 for 2 against South Carolina, 3 for 4 against Kentucky. So yeah, it's been working okay. That was after the 1 for 3 against LSU. I don't know. I want my field goal kickers to focus on field goal kicking. Like,
yep. That's what matters.
I had a friend of mine on my team. He was just the kickoff specialist. That's what he did. He just knocked the hell out of it as hard as he could. Or, if they wanted to do something creative, hit it 4.8 seconds in the air so that the coverage team can get down. Like, just do that. That's fine. We don't have to tax Harrison Mevis, who is, your best lawn shotter. So yeah, I'm good with that. But it bit them in the butt against Georgia, and they're going to make a change, which is good. I'm glad they recognize it. I didn't realize it wasn't on purpose. Otherwise, I would have been more freaked out about Mevis letting up on his kicks. But yeah, fix the problem. Sounds like they are, so it's less of an issue now. Other than that, yeah, I mean, Georgia was just a missed opportunity, and those sorts of things happen. We'll get to move on. We get to play Tennessee. I don't know if you know this, BK, or if you've been monitoring this, but Missouri's got the opportunity to do something really unique on Saturday. And I'm not just talking about getting the Tennessee monkey off your back. There are 4 FBS college football teams located in the state of Tennessee. And Missouri is currently 3-0 against 3 of them.
I didn't know where you were going. I was like, I saw earlier today, it's the first time in 40 years that Missouri has hosted 2 top 15 programs in Columbia. And for them to be able to beat both of them, I would imagine it's like the first time in 75 years or something insane that's happened. I didn't know if you were about to say something about the 10-win season. I didn't know if you were about to say, hey, Missouri has a chance to finish this year with 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 wins against ranked opponents. Or I didn't know where you were going with this. And instead, this is what you pull out. Instead, Absolutely. You pull out the geographical reference of the 4 teams from Tennessee that are in the FBS that you're able to beat. That's amazing. Good for
I
you.
Want to win state.
I
want to win state. And if we do, Rock'em Nation's printing shirts. I want to go ahead and put that out there. We're going to say, Tennessee state champs. But yes, to your point, yes, it's a ranked matchup between Missouri and Tennessee for the first time ever. Yes, it's hosting top 15 teams. Yes, Missouri's still on path to get 10 wins. Okay, all the cool stuff. I want to win state. Go Tigers, win state. Also, and I know we touched on this, but this is absolutely true. If it feels like Missouri has just played versions of Georgia all year, it's because they have. Kansas State, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Georgia are all just various levels of the same team that run the ball, sprinkle in some deadly passing, and are a defense forward unit. And so, yeah, Missouri is 2-1 against that type of team. They failed against the best, and they've played some close ones against the others. This is just another similar test with the names different and the style a little bit different. But BK, how are you feeling as far as this matchup goes?
Middling. It's weird because this is not a matchup, and these are the famous last words, because Joe Milton is the exact type of guy who, once you count him out, he's going to hit like 3 70-yard bombs over the top this week. But
yeah,
this is not a matchup where the passing game really scares me. Last week, you knew that there was a chance, depending on how things go, Georgia has the talent at wide receiver and the talent at quarterback to hit a few big plays when they need them. And they're efficient in doing so. So they've got a quarterback that doesn't make mistakes. He is super efficient. He gets rid of the ball quickly. He makes all of these different things, right? And that's where the comparison gets a little different when you come to Tennessee. Their quarterback is none of the things that I just mentioned. He is not accurate. He is not efficient. He does go bombs away. He can throw the ball 75 yards through the air on his knees, and he is quite the runner. He can absolutely help them on the ground, and he's got a little power to him as well as a runner. So you've got some unique stuff that Joe Milton brings to the table, but the real threat here against Tennessee, man, this is a smash mouth football team. They've got a pretty good offensive line, a really good defensive line, and they're going to stop your running game, and they're going to run the crap out of the football by using RPOs all day long. That's it. It's just going to be RPO after RPO after RPO after RPO after RPO, and they're just going to hand it to the running back 50 times. And there's going to be 3 different dudes that are getting the ball. All of them are really good, and Jalen Wright is the chief among them, who is just a spectacular football player and is so much fun to watch. So, yeah.
He is.
Moral of the story, I'm anxious, but for very different reasons than I've been anxious in any other football game this year. And very different reasons than I was going into this game last year. I don't think you can make a more different team year to year than what Tennessee has been this year versus last. They've completely changed their identity.
They're still super fast. They didn't become some pedestrian, Iowa type,
No, but I'm talking about in terms of like, okay, let's go from a top 5 passing offense in all of college football that is okay running the ball to we're going to just suddenly become a top 3 running offense in all of college football. And we're just going to go full change over year. And it's a mark of a really good coach to be able to do that, to be willing to do that based on what your personnel is year to year.
Absolutely. I mean, they lost 2 NFL caliber receivers. They only returned really one guy who had more than 20 targets last year. That was Squirrel White. And then they returned all 3 of their running backs, 60% of their offensive line. So, when I did the preview, I always go back and I look at the previews that I write in summer, and I'm like, what am I thinking? And like, what did it actually end up? Like, I was like, oh, you know what? They're going to be fine because you just plug in whatever receiver and whatever quarterback, and it's like, well, they're good. Okay, I was wrong there. Should have read the tea leaves on, oh, you return 3 running backs and like really good offensive linemen. Yeah, you're probably going to run the hell out of the ball. I should have seen that coming, but okay. They're okay throwing the ball. It's weird. Their success rates, which I know is not everything, but it's 46% rushing the ball and then 52% passing the ball, which oddly enough ranks 33rd in both in the country. But their run rates are absolutely insane, which is what you would expect, because that is their main weapon. They have a standing downs run rate. They are 52nd. They run on standing downs 60% of the time, and they run in passing down situations 40% of the time. So it's like that's almost all they do. Here's the good news. You think Missouri's offensive line gets penalized a lot? Tennessee's is worse. Worse. And they're really not all that good in short yardage situations, You could say they avoid short
RPO.
yard situations.
It's because
they're
RPOs.
Yeah. But like
they don't actually run running plays. They run RPOs. Yeah. And this is a really big deal going into a game like this for Missouri's defense, is that like this is not a team that is, the way that they are smash mouth is very different than the way that like Georgia of yesteryear or Kansas State is smash mouth. Mm-hmm. Those teams will come out with like 3 tight ends, I formation, and just pummel you face forward. This team's still going to spread you out. They're just going to spread you out and then run it up the gut by going with an inside zone. Like that's, it's a very different style, but it ends up being the same effect.
Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss do very similar things with Quinshon Judkins, right? So it's going to be unique. Now, we've seen Missouri handle running games before. They did a really good job of putting a lid on K-State. They did an excellent job of frustrating the hell out of Georgia's running game. We've seen this before as far as like stopping good running games. It's just the scheme is going to be a lot different. It's going to be a lot of eye discipline. Okay, it's going to be a lot of not falling for all the pre-snap stuff or like what it looks like it's going to be. And so, hey, bad time to lose a veteran linebacker. Like you said, this is not a good time to lose that. Safeties are going to have to be able to pick up their reads really, really quickly. And the corners are going to have to hold their routes, because what they are looking for is for you to get suckered in to inside zone or the quarterback keeper and crash down. And then, oh, by the way, the tight end is just floating all by himself, or, Squirrel White in the inside receiver is just, he gets lost in the mush and there he goes. That's their entire passing game. So it's going to be a lot of discipline, and we know Blake Baker likes to blitz. So it's going to be a really interesting meeting of styles that can kind of break one way or the other.
Yeah. I think the biggest storyline for me going into this one, man, is just very simply tackling. When Missouri is at its best defensively, they are bringing guys down to the ground, and it's so simplistic, but it's just the truth. Last week, I think even potentially with the interception, the first one, the second one was desperation play. I honestly just kind of write that one off. But even with that interception, if Missouri makes the tackles at the first point of contact more consistently against Georgia, they still might win the game. There were too many missed tackles in that one. Now, they were still, like you said, they frustrated the hell out of them, and they got them in the backfield a couple of times. Like the defense is not the reason you lost the game, but if you're going to nitpick in a game like that and you want to go somewhere other than just the interception, that would probably be one thing that you could point to. And it's been an issue all year long. It was an issue in the K-State game. It was a massive issue in the LSU game. They've just had way too many missed tackles. And if you miss tackles in this game and they'll force them, they're going to be off to the races. Like, they'll go 60 yards. That's absolutely in play against this team.
Yeah. I went back and looked at tackling rates for the 2022 defense versus the 2023 defense. In 22, your worst tackler was at about an 88% tackle accuracy. 88%, right? In 2023, you have now three starters who are below 75% in tackle accuracy. You can probably figure out who they are. It doesn't really matter. The point is that they're just not good at wrapping up. One of them is the guy that's
filling in for Chad Bailey.
Yep, that's one of them. The game is about blocking and tackling. If you can't bring your guy down, then it doesn't really matter what scheme you run, does it? You could be in the right spot. If you can't bring him down, okay. Eye discipline, tackle discipline. That's what it's going to come down to, which is a terrifying prospect. But, I mean, the marquee matchup to me is Missouri's offense versus Tennessee's defense, because that is the better unit of both. And, man, I know you said it in the last show, and it's true. You don't run on Tennessee. But if you do, you go for like 40 yards, but you don't run on them. So it's going to have to be a lot of creativity. Cody Schrader is going to have to grind. All right, a little muscle hamster is going to get mixed up like concrete. By the time the fourth quarter comes around, he's got to be ready, because it's going to be a frustrating 3 quarters for him in the offensive line.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting one, because I don't think you're going to be able to run well against them. I just don't. I really don't see it happening. This is just such an excellent run defense, and I think Missouri's going to have a counterpunch. And what we've seen this year, and the reason why we believe this is a really good Mizzou team, is that they've had a counterpunch, man. When you go up against good running defenses, if they're just going to take away everything that you're trying to do on the ground, Missouri will pass. Be like, okay, cool. You took that away. We're going to keep you honest. We're going to keep giving the ball to Cody Schrader. We're not just going to completely avoid the run, but we'll go ahead and like give the ball to Luther Burden or Mookie Cooper or Theo Weiss. We'll throw it to Brett Norfleet a couple of times. Like, we'll just go ahead and make our hay that way. So they've got other ways that they can beat teams. The only teams that have really run so far this year on Tennessee are Florida and South Carolina, strangely enough. But every other team has been held in check, including Alabama. So I do not foresee Missouri having much of any success on the ground against this team.
No. And, you know, Florida, that's all they can do is just run. That's all they do.
And even their success is 4.2 yards per carry. Like, that's not a good day on the ground. But compared to the 2.8 yards per carry that Tennessee is allowing on the season, it's excellent.
Mm-hmm. It is. And I just – it's the marquee matchup, but it's going to be the most frustrating because you're going to sit here and you're going to think, well, this is Missouri's offense. Why aren't they moving the ball? Why aren't they scoring? Why isn't anything working? And you know, really, it's very simplistic. If Tennessee holds you under 20, they win. Like, every single time. They want to operate from that comfort zone of you're freaking out, you're struggling, and you're just playing right into their grasp. Right? You're becoming predictable. It's easy for them to kind of just squeeze the life out of you. You have to keep it close. You have to be able to do what you want to do. And you do have to just eat the fact that Cody Schrader is going to run into a brick wall 4, 5, 6 times and get nothing. And we're just going to have to deal with it. He's going to deal with it. Everyone's going to have to deal with it. I don't know who your breakout is going to be. Luther Burden is questionable, which you might say that's just injury bait. That's fine. I don't know.
He's going to be fine. He's playing. He practiced today.
You need a Theo Weiss game, you know, the back shoulder or just break one. You need a Marquise Johnson to show up like 60 yards downfield and catch the ball. That would be super helpful against K-State. I'm really curious if they use Johnson or if they kind of keep the rotation to 3, because against Georgia, it was like 12 dudes that saw the field and they didn't really break anybody else out. So I don't know if that's their go-to, that's their binky, or if they expand it a little bit. You see Mekhi Miller, Daniel Blood, Marquise Johnson. I don't know what the answer is, but I would like to see that.
I want to see more of Marquise Johnson in this game because I think you're going to need an explosive or two through the air just to open up some of that, either the underneath passing game or just to take the safeties out of the box, man. You're going to have to get something a little deeper. Now, your offensive line is going to have to hold up if you decide to do that because it's going to take a little longer. Those plays take some time to develop, but I think this is one of those games where you bring in Marquise Johnson for his typical 10 snaps, 5 to 10 snaps, and you just say, hey, go deep on every single one of them. Just go deep, go deep, go deep. And then on one of those, maybe even 2 or 3 of them, just chuck it up, see if he's able to come down with it. You can trust him to either make a play on it and make sure that there's no play there for the defensive back, or draw a pass interference, or actually come down with it. Any of the 3 are potentially good outcomes for Mizzou.
Yeah. Tennessee is surprisingly bad at defending third and medium and surprisingly bad at scoring points once they get into scoring opportunity. Ride that for all it's worth. Abuse the hell out of that because there's really not a whole lot of else that they are bad at. You know, that's just part of it. So I don't know.
It's a really good defense that you're going up against.
It's great. Defense. It's great. Their DC
is it excellent. Better overall than Georgia on the season? Like fewer weaknesses?
No, because Georgia's one weakness is scoring defense, and that's basically it. Tennessee's is third downs, stuffing the run, or third downs and scoring. So I was like, okay, there's one extra little wrinkle on top of there, but they're pretty close to the same thing. And really, it's almost exactly like K-State. They are eerily similar in how they match up strengths and weakness.
Yeah. This has to be a Brady Cook game. Brady Cook has to go out there, and for the first time in a few weeks, you need him to win you the game. That's just
does he need 400, or does he just need make a few plays?
No, because I think if you get to 27, something like that in this game, that might be what you're looking for, something in that range. So 250 through the air, 60 on the ground. You could get like any combination that gets him to 300 yards, I think probably does it.
I can get on board. As far as score goes, I just have 30 to 27 stuck in my head. I can't tell you which side gets there, but that's where I'm at.
I feel like 27, 23, and I'm kind of like you. I also don't know which side ends up getting there. But I think this is going to be really close. I think it's going to be incredibly frustrating to watch. Like, as a Mizzou fan, you're just going to be sitting there pulling your hair out all day long. It's going to feel like the K-State game. I think that will be the comparison for this one. But a slightly better opponent. I think this is a better team overall than what Kansas State was at that point in time. And you said 30 to 27. That was the end of that game, the final score for that one.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
I think it's going to be pretty similar. And I just like that one where it required Brady Cook to be spectacular. That was his coming out party. And Luther Burden to be awesome. That was also kind of his like really big game against a Power 5 opponent. I think that's what it will take against this game, against this team. It doesn't have to be Luther, but it's got to be at least one of those receivers coming through in a big way.
Somebody.
By the way, Marquise Johnson had a big play in that one.
He did. That was his, that kid can play. I remember that because we had not seen him against Middle Tennessee or against South Dakota. What a happy revelation that was. That was a great play. See, great games have great moments, right? We will remember that one, including the kick.
Brett Norfleet got involved. That was Theo Weiss's like, hey, this guy can do stuff. And Mookie Cooper, hey, he's really like out there actually not just running wind sprints. He's doing stuff where he catches the football and then he runs and he gets yards. It's awesome.
Like before that, we had seen one Luther Burden catch where he went up against two South Dakota defenders and like right in the middle, kind of caught it at an angle. You're like, okay, this kid's good. This is the first time you're like, oh, he's really good. They just took the restrictor plate off. Cool. This is great. That was like that first touchdown drive. They nailed it deep. Great. So yeah, do that again. Run the touchdown play. 30 to 27. What is the line now? I know it opened. Tennessee was favored by 1.
I think it's been fluctuating at 1 for either direction. Let me see where it's at today. At the time that we were recording this, and we are recording late on Tuesday night, it is at 1 in favor of Tennessee, which means nothing. If it's a 1 point line, it's a pick 'em. That's what it is. They Vegas views this as a pick 'em. ESPN's FPI views it as a 60-40 game in favor of Tennessee. I think, if I'm not mistaken, SP Plus was kind of similar. It's a close to pick 'em as well for them. So
they have it as, let's see. He says that Tennessee is a 55% win probability.
And I saw earlier today a different advanced stats profile has Mizzou as like a 55% chance as well. So depending on where you look, depending on what numbers they're utilizing in their model, it's a 55-45-ish type of a game one way or the other. And a couple of plays here or there are going to determine the outcome. And that's incredibly frustrating, but that's the way this goes.
Yeah. It's about as close as you can get. And really this, I mean, doesn't mean Missouri can't lose, but this is the last big test of the season.
Oh, this is huge. Let's not undersell this. Like it feels less big because they lost to Georgia. And so now like the big time stakes are gone, but dude, Missouri can still make a New Year's 6 bowl game. Like this, This team can still play. And I know bowl games don't matter to people anymore. Dude, that'd be awesome. That'd be so cool to see this team play in one of those.
Yeah.
It'd be huge.
I mean, the last time you saw Missouri play in January, do you remember the last time they've done that?
Was the Citrus Bowl in January?
Was that Citrus Bowl. That's right. Against Minnesota, 2015 for the 14 season. It doesn't happen all that often, guys. That's a big deal. And I know, you know, the clearly the college football playoff committee still respects Missouri. The rankings that were released a couple hours ago, Missouri only went down to 14th after, you know, losing to Georgia. Usually a loss, you know, this early, they'll just go, oh, let's just get this junk out of here. Still got them at 14th, top 15 team in the country. And again, the crazy thing is that all these teams that were ranked to start the year have not lost. There's like been like 2 ranked teams in the top 15 that have lost. We're in November. This is where the losses happen. There is credit to Missouri to just winning out, even if you don't think you have the access to the playoff or the SEC, just by winning out and having these other teams lose. Top 10, top 8, I don't know. Stranger things have happened. So it's worth it.
Especially with a win against Tennessee. And don't forget, like, Ole Miss has a game this weekend at Athens. They absolutely could lose that game. And if they do, I don't know that they would for sure go below Mizzou, but they might in the rankings. You know, they have the win over LSU, and that's their big resume builder. And that's going to be the differentiation between them and Missouri. But they lost against Alabama, and if they lose this weekend, they will have lost against Georgia. Yeah. It's not all that dissimilar from Missouri's resume, and Missouri has a win at that point over Tennessee and K-State, which would probably be better than what Ole Miss's resume would be. So, I mean, Penn State has a big game this weekend as well. They're currently ranked at number 10 in the country. They're taking on Michigan. I think they're going to lose that game, and if they do, I would assume that Missouri would probably bump up ahead of them as well. Missouri could be like top 10-ish after this week if they win.
But you got to show up and you got to win.
Yep.
Right? And it's a sold-out crowd. So please go to the tickets that you bought. Please use those. Go root on your team. What's also cool is that there's no more 11 o'clock kickoffs for the rest of the season, for whatever that's worth. You know, I mean, I think we bemoaned last year how many times that Missouri ended up in the 11 o'clock slot, and rightfully so. Like, that's no fun, but I don't know. It seems like the TV folks respect us too, because he had the past 5 games. The last 11 o'clock was LSU. After that, it was 6:30 Kentucky, 2:30 South Carolina, 2:30 Georgia, 2:30 Tennessee, 6:30 Florida, 3 o'clock Arkansas. Of course, all times are Central God's time. People respect this team. They know it's good. And I think the fan base knows it too. Obviously, 4 sellouts in a single season. That's awesome. So yeah, let's beat Tennessee for the first time in 5 years. Let's win a very cool top 15 matchup at Faurot Field in November. Let's right the wrongs of almost beating Georgia, and let's beat Tennessee. We can do it. BK, final thoughts.
Final thoughts are this is a really big game, and it doesn't feel that way because of what happened last week, but it is. It really, really, really is. And for your resume, for a potential New Year's Six bowl game, for the health of the program to know, hey, Missouri was able to punch up this year. They fell short, but were close against LSU and Georgia. The way this feels like 2018 is if you lose this game.
Yes.
The way this feels like it is something more meaningful is by winning. That is how you delineate this season from 2018. Because in 2018, you lost against Georgia, you lost against Alabama, but then you lost 2 other flip games in South Carolina and Kentucky. You got to do something that feels different this time around. That year, you got the big win against Florida. This year, you got the big win against Kansas State. Make this a better season than 2018. And the way that you do it is by beating Tennessee on Saturday.
Let's do it. That's the show for today. As always, we appreciate the downloads and the subscriptions. Leave a comment or rate us. We love all types of feedback from you all. You can follow us on Twitter at Matt and H.E. Edwards. He's at BK Sports Talk. And of course, you can follow the Rock M flagship at Rock M Nation and our podcasting outlet at Rock M Radio. We appreciate you tuning in this time. We'll do better next time. And until then, MIZ.
ZOU.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Rock M Radio, a proud partner of Fans First Sports Network. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to see more just like it beamed directly into your personal device, just click the subscribe button below. And you can find this podcast through the Apple Podcast app or for iPhone, or the Google Podcast app for Android, or whatever app you use to listen to your podcast. We are also available on Spotify. Just search for Rock M Radio. And if you like other sports, Fans First Sports Network is a podcast network that has coverage of all other teams, Major League Baseball, MLS, NFL, whatever you want to listen and read about. It is a great network full of really fantastic podcasts. So look them up and subscribe to any and all of those podcasts. Rock M Radio will be back with more episodes coming soon. Thanks.